This is Hannibal here from the HannibalTV.com. I'm live. I got my dog with me, Piper. She was helping me skim through the AEW Dark Show and the NWA Power Show that a bunch of people asked me to review. The production values for both were good. The NWA show kind of lost me with Nick Aldis opening promo. It was very boring to me. And then the first match was a couple of fat guys against jobbers. So after that, I just kind of skimmed to the end, which was Aldis and the other guy whose name I forget, Tim Storm, who's a school teacher. And Big 21 says he's about to watch the NWA show. I did like the interviews they did with the school teacher and the match. The school teacher is in good shape for his age. I don't know if he's in his late 50s or 60s, but he looks good for his age. The match didn't do much for me. I'm not a Nick Aldis fan, but overall the productions were good as far as the look and the camera and all that. But the actual wrestling part of it didn't interest me too much. I noticed it is a YouTube show, so let's just get the facts straight here. I like Billy Corgan, but let's get the facts straight here. This is his pet project that he's funding himself. It's going to take a lot to make money on that project, posting stuff on YouTube, because I'm aware of what YouTube pays, and you really need a lot of subscribers and views to make serious money on YouTube. So I'm not against NWA by any stretch. They need some better talent. James Storm, I saw his little promo. There wasn't anything too bad about that. AWM says, why don't I fight in Bellator? Well, when they offer me a contract, sure. It's not, if Swagger can do it, I can. Well, let's see. Swagger was a WWE champion, so he already had a name value. So that's a difference. But as far as those guys that they're picking to fight Swagger, I could definitely give him way more of a fight than any of the guys I've seen so far, or the latest guy he's supposed to fight this month, who I saw in one of his fights. He literally just curled up into a ball instead of going onto his back and guard. So I don't think he'll be much more of a challenge. It will be interesting to see. There's not a big chance Swagger will lose his next fight, but if he did lose a fight to one of the no-names, if that would affect how he's perceived, but I don't think he will. These opponents are being very well submitted. Krilling 876 says, I thought they were supposed to have managers and valets in NWA. Aldis did have a valet. She was attractive. She took a clothesline in the match against Tim Storm. They didn't make much out of the girl getting hit by the big Tim Storm, and like there was no one helping her up. That was one thing that stood out to me. Now that you reminded me, thanks Killings 876, that this girl is hot. I'll give her that. The valet of Aldis took a clothesline from Tim Storm to the floor, and she was up shortly after that. For the AEW Dark, I skimmed through a lot of that too. I just don't have a big attention span for wrestling. Someone asked me the other day, well, why should we listen to you for news if you don't watch it yourself? Well, I do promote. I've been a wrestler since 2001. I've been following wrestling all my life, so I'm very knowledgeable about it. I do follow the news closely. I talk to people involved in wrestling, and I do read the results. He meant to say AEW, managers and valets in AEW. There was none that I could really notice, but as I said, I fast-forwarded through it. The match that stood out to me was the Marco stunt match which it was Marco Stunt, Luchasaurus, and Jungle Boy against SoCal Uncensored. And what stood out to me in that match was Marco Stunt is apparently like 5'2", maybe barely over 100 pounds. And he's taking all these moves and getting back up that looked like they destroy him. And one thing that I found funny is he did a plancha to the outside on one of the SoCal Uncensored guys, who are all good size. They might not be giants, but they're muscular, average size guys. And they went down from that, from a plancha from a 120-pound little kid. Give me a break. Like, this guy could, like, I would just push him down if he plancha on me. He's so small. It doesn't look like he could actually produce enough force to knock any of these guys down. Jay Smith says, call me old-fashioned, but I'm not watching wrestling with transies. Well, I didn't notice that Nyla Rose, she was not on the AEW Dark show because she was on the main show. I did not see AEW Dynamite this week. If anyone saw it, let me know how it was. I didn't have any interest in watching that. GP says the NWA show was pretty solid. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. I've heard people say that NWA was the best show released this week. And from what I've seen this week, it was the most interesting show to me. I did watch the Tyson Fury segment on Raw. That was the live version, not the edited version where they've probably cut it out, but where he's hitting these people and they're acting like they're being hit, even though the punches are missing from 6 inches away. And I thought that was like awful. And actually, I mentioned that to Billy Jack Haynes during my brief interview with him today before we actually pressed record. We were talking a bit of boxing. Thought he was going to be normal for that interview. But things changed a little bit. But he mentioned that Tyson Fury thing was also ridiculous as a boxer. Like, if you can't punch, don't punch. If you can't make it look realistic. That was so stupid. The woman making Nyla Rose look strong in the ring at least. Well, yeah, she's bigger. She was much bigger than the girl in the match against her from AEW Dynamite last week. I don't know if she was on this week. Doesn't seem like anyone watching this right now at 1:54 in the morning watched the AEW Dynamite show either. AWM says Raw opening the show with Lana getting undressed with the sexual chocolate didn't seem PG, a new era. I did not see that. I might have to go back and look at that. I only was interested in what they did with Tyson Fury. And by the way, there's going to be a press conference in Las Vegas this week where apparently they're going to announce it's official for Crown Jewel, Tyson Fury against Braun Strowman and Cain Velasquez against Brock Lesnar. So they're paying all that money. It's rumored around $20 million a show to WWE for these Saudi Arabia shows. So they can afford these huge matches on those shows. So good for the wrestling fans if they like that. The Raw rating was still down this week, despite Tyson Fury being on the show. And I suspect the AEW rating will also be down this week. Although I do expect that AEW will still beat NXT. Timothy Courier says both of those matches will suck and be brutal, referring to Lesnar, Velasquez, and Fury, Strowman. Well, I would imagine they're going to practice those matches, and I don't imagine they'll be long matches. But from what I saw from Fury, Strowman, or in the ring there on Raw, I might want to watch that just because it's going to be that brutal. It might be interesting to watch. And I'm not taking anything away from Fury as a boxer, but it just didn't seem like I actually went back and watched the Stone Cold Steve Austin, Mike Tyson pull apart when they had their confrontation, because that was amazing. It got a huge buzz going. And that was so much more realistic. They're fighting, there's the groups pulling them apart, the WWE group and the Mike Tyson group. With this one, there was a group of security guards that are independent wrestlers standing around the ring before anyone even came in the ring. So you knew no matter what, there was going to be some type of pull apart. And then there was situations in that where Fury, for instance, pushes back 10 to 15 security guards and they all go flying. I know he's a big guy, but we know that would never happen in a real fight. Then you throw in the phantom punches. Do I think there will be a trend to get back bigger body wrestlers? The NWA show didn't have a guy under 200 that I can remember. Some of the jobbers were under 200. They did have some fat wrestlers. Didn't look in good shape. I hope that will be a trend, that people will start using bigger wrestlers again, but it doesn't appear that way. Looking at AEW, their overall roster. Hopefully NWA. I'm giving hope to NWA. I know that David Marquez guy involved in that has never seemed to like me. So maybe that's one point against them for me, because I know he seems to not like me for whatever reason, even though he has little to no personal dealings with me ever. My only interaction with him was back when he was running the New Japan LA dojo back in 2006. I did a tryout and it was good enough to get me a match on that New Japan LA dojo show that night. After that, they'd said that there was going to be like a development system for New Japan in the US that they would be interested in having me involved with, but I never heard back. And that was my only dealings with Marquez, other than I saw him in Puerto Rico a few years later. He was filming something with Mario Savaldi at a WWC show. But I've heard through other people that he's had some issue with me. So I found that a little weird. But for that reason, I don't expect you guys to ever see me in NWA. King Thor says Cain wanted to rock the mask, but WWE wasn't having it. Well, yeah, they want him to be recognizable. If you look at that AAA pay-per-view in Madison Square Garden, it was moved to the Hulu Theater, which did not sell out the Hulu Theater. In Billy Graham's day, they would sell out the theater and Madison Square Garden. The theater, you would just watch what was going on. And it only had 60 live buys and 300 to 400 overall buys. So obviously they want him without the mask, so people will recognize him, and they're paying him. It's been rumored that some of these Saudi Arabia guys are getting paid 3 to 4 million per match. So for that kind of money, I think I read he made somewhere around the 500,000 mark for his last MMA fight, which he lost. So why risk another MMA fight, which you could lose again, when you can make probably more money than you would have made in UFC, and not have the stress of having to fight and the training camps where you're taking punishment to the head every day.